Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Good morning. Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
And I'm Gavin Courtney.
And thank you for joining us this morning.
It's a nice Thursday morning.
That's right.
Yep, up here in the city, everything's looking nice and calm so far. But we're going to get a weather update in a few and let you know what you can expect going into the weekend.
That's right. So we're going to be she's on the line. We got Michelle Smith-Augustin.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, how are you doing this morning?
I am good, and you?
We're doing good. Looking forward to hearing about our weather forecast. So let's talk about our general situation for this morning.
All right, we expect fair conditions to prevail most of today.
Okay, and over the next 24 hours?
All right, we can expect sunny skies with isolated showers most of today. And then this afternoon or later this evening, we expect a slight increase in showers and thunderstorms, mainly over inland areas. And then by tonight, we see that activity spreading to most areas of the country.
So lots of rain. And what about our winds?
Winds will be from the east to northeast at 5 to 10 knots, so very light winds today.
Okay. And let's get into our temperatures. What do the high temperatures look like today?
All right, along the coast, we can expect about 86 Fahrenheit. As we move inland, about 90 Fahrenheit, and up in the hills, about 80 Fahrenheit.
And for tonight, what can we expect?
Tonight, temperatures should dip a bit. Along the coast, about 73 Fahrenheit, 68 Fahrenheit inland, and about 63 Fahrenheit up in the hills.
Okay, now let's talk about our outlook as we head into the weekend. What can we expect over the next few days?
All right, over the next few days, we expect a cold front to cross the country tomorrow. So with that, later tonight, as I alluded to earlier, we expect an increase in showers, thunderstorms, along with periods of rain over most areas of the country, and that should continue through tomorrow and up to Saturday morning. But for Friday night and Saturday morning, the activity is expected to be mainly over the south.
Okay.
Temperatures will be cooler, of course. And yes, the winds will start to increase tomorrow as well. So we see a wind shift tomorrow, north to northwesterly. So a rather cool couple of days going into the weekend.
But it'll bring some rain.
Yes, this will going to bring some rain. What happened is the front is expected to remain over the country for much of Friday and into Saturday. So it's kind of just stay over us.
Okay.
But it will be cloudy and cool.
I was going to say, the cold is going to stay longer than the rain, right?
Yes, the cold should stay longer than the rain. Yes, we expect temperatures to continue mild well into the start of next week.
All right. We'll take the showers then.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you so much for that update.
You're welcome.
All right, and we hope you have a great day, Michelle.
Yes, thanks.
All right. Bye.
Well, there you have it.
I think all the forecasters know by now that we get happy when we hear cold front.
I know, right? Although this one's going to bring a lot of rain, so maybe this might be a good weekend to stay in bed, maybe read a book, something like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's not much else you can do,
there is
right?
Also that, yeah.
That's where we are.
It's an excuse not to exercise outside yet, right?
No, that's a different
New Year's
story.
resolutions.
All right, let's keep things moving this morning, and we'll get into our eye opener. And our eye opener taken from dailyom.com goes like this. Nothing can fill the emptiness that remains in a space vacated by a passion that we have tossed aside. There are times in life when we are committed to pursuing our passions, Every molecule in our body is focused on doing what we love. At other times, necessity and responsibility dictate that we put our dreams aside and do what needs to be done. It is during these moments that we may choose to forget what it is that we love to do. There are many other reasons for why we may leave our passions behind. A hobby may lose its appeal once we've realized it will never turn into our dream job. Someone important to us may keep telling us that our passions are childish and unsuitable until we finally believe them. You don't have to neglect your responsibilities to pursue your passions, and you don't have to neglect your commitments to do what you love. When you make an effort to incorporate your interests into your life, the fire within you ignites. You feel excited, inspired, and fed by the flames that are sparked by living your life with passion for what you love.
This is a really great eye-opener, and it's one, of course, that I think that most of us can relate to. I know I can, especially with a lot of the things that I'm into, especially music, because, of course, I'm doing other things. Of course, I've got a career in the law currently, but even through all of my years studying law, the passion that I had for music never did go away. So whenever I would come home on a break, and especially since I finished school and I've been back, I've always had to. And it didn't feel like a choice to me, and be involved in music some way, whether it was through performing or teaching, which is more recently what I've been doing, but. It's something that you can't ignore, which is quite rightly what the eye-opener says. And if you do try to suppress it or ignore it, put it aside, it can weigh on your soul, one. And two, it's something that you never forget. So it always makes sense to feed it, and it makes you happy. It makes other people happy. You develop an interest in something that really, or develop a skill or a passion in something that you really like. So it's a very beneficial thing all around. And just I don't know how exactly to put this. It's like a way of just feeding your soul in a way. It's like that sort of nourishment and the spirit that you need. And it's, first of all, most people should be lucky if they're able to identify what it is that they do have. And if you're able to pursue it, whether or not it's professionally, whether it's through a hobby or whether it's through helping others pursue that same sort of passion, just being involved in some way is a really enriching experience. So finding that passion is the first thing, and then nurturing it is the other thing. And you'll find that if you do find it, why not?
Yeah, I love that ending when it talks about it igniting your soul, and being fed off the flames. I think it's such a great way to describe what it's like when you're doing something that you genuinely love. And I do appreciate that the eye-opener also allows for the bit of pragmatism, where sometimes what you love is not going to be what sustains you. But as you rightly noted, I think the key part is being able to find a way to incorporate it. There are some people who, throw caution to the wind and pursue their passions no matter what. And some are able to make a career out of it, and some I think are still, I can't help but thinking of musicians, and especially in Belize, who have attempted to dedicate their life to just doing their craft. And some are able to make it, and some, unfortunately, have to go back to doing a regular 9-to-5. So, on that note, remember to support our artists. But the point is, though, I think when it talks about the space that you feel, that void, it's something that a lot of people perhaps can identify with, but don't realize it's because of this very same point, that you're just not fulfilled by what it is that you're doing.
For sure.
It is important that you find what that passion is, and there are always ways to fit it in, whether it's volunteering or whether it's, if it's music, if you want to, help to support a band, if you want to take a new class to learn something, if it's art, doing something on the side. It could be anything, but the point is you can't just leave it aside and think it's going to go away, because it does catch up on you.
And I think that the most important thing, just to continue off of what you were saying, is just finding that outlet for it is the number one thing. Once you've identified it, and I know certain people who are very, very passionate. I can think of one example of one friend who's really passionate about dancing, but she doesn't want to be a dance performer, whatever, but she will dance in her house by herself every day, so she'll talk to me about it on her birthday. So I know that, she has a job and everything, she has a family, but she just loves dancing, and she says nothing will ever make her stop dancing in life. So, and that's her outlet, and it's enough for her. It's finding your own way and finding the way that will make it satisfy you. But the most important thing is to not ignore it, I think.
Of course. All right, so that is the eye-opener for this morning. All right, we got to get moving into our show for today. And this morning, we are going to be talking about education. Once again, we're going to be joined by the CEO in the Ministry of Education, Diane Mejia, and we are going to be talking about what the rest of the school year is going to look like, what strategies they're putting in place, what they hope to be able to accomplish to ensure that the children are also being fed some learning, while still, of course, keeping parents and the children themselves sane.
And for our second conversation, we are going to be speaking about economic recovery, which of course is a topic that we have been talking about and is in the front of a lot of people's minds since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're going to be getting an update from the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry about plans for economic recovery and the path forward.
All right, and closing off, Miss Universe Belize. Well, we are going to be crowning a brand new Miss Belize on January 9th. Now, there's a whole new process that was undertaken this year to be able to select a queen. As you know, public events and mass gatherings not being held. So we're going to hear from the director and, of course, from the reigning Miss Universe Belize about the process that they undertook and what we can expect in this big reveal.
Yep. Yeah, so we do have a very good show lined up for you today, so we hope you watch. But before we go, we do have a birthday shout out to give. And today we are wishing a very, very happy birthday to Corporal Victor Noble. So we hope you have a very, very special birthday from all of us here at Channel 5 and Open Your Eyes. I also want to give a special birthday shout out because today is my sister's birthday. So Ali, happy birthday. I know you're probably not awake yet, but definitely want to wish you a happy birthday.
Oh, so your celebration continues.
Yep, yeah.
All right, so with that, though, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking to the CEO in the Ministry of Education, so please stay tuned.
In these challenging times, the one thing that is certain is that the Belize Bank Limited is here for you. There is nothing more important than your health and safety, and we continue to make every effort to make banking safer for you. Our staff is working around the clock to make sure you can do your banking conveniently 24/7 using our mobile banking app and online banking and keeping ATMs up and running. We value your relationship with us and are here to provide the support you need. First responders are also out there 24/7. Thank you, healthcare workers, security forces, firefighters, caregivers. You are all appreciated. Stay safe. We will get through this together. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
Es un hecho que puedes obtener servicios ilimitados con Smart. ¿Cansado de que se corte la línea cuando más necesitas estar conectado? Es un hecho que cuando te suscribes al plan de Smart Plus, obtienes llamadas, textos y datos ilimitados. Y también es un hecho que te puedes suscribir con un grupo de 5 miembros al plan Smart Share y hasta 40 miembros al plan Smart Enterprise para llamadas, textos y datos ilimitados. Smart tiene los verdaderos planes ilimitados. es un hecho. Sé smart y vive de forma smart.
Everyone is at risk of catching COVID-19, so it's important to quickly recognize signs and symptoms of the infection. The most common symptoms are fever, dry cough, and tiredness or fatigue. Some people may also have sore throat, aches and pains, stuffy nose, or diarrhea. But a few people have also reported pink eye or conjunctivitis, headache, loss of taste or smell, a rash on skin, or change in the color of fingers or toes. Emergency warning signs that require immediate medical attention are extreme difficulty breathing, severe constant pain or pressure in the chest, becoming confused, unable to talk or move, bluish lips, face, fingers, or toes. For more information, call 0800-MOH-CARE. Help keep Belize safe.
Miss Belize.
The new Miss Universe Belize will be announced live Saturday, January 9th, right here on Channel 5, starting at 3 p.m. Find out who will be representing the jewel at the next Miss Universe pageant.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And we are back. And if you're joining us right now, we are just jumping into our first conversation. Of course, we are bringing to you our COVID-19 update. And this morning we are going to be speaking about the projections for the school year. And we're speaking, of course, with Dan Mahia, who is the CEO in the Ministry of Education. We're going to be talking all about the plans for moving forward. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. And thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right. So before we get into some of the details of the ministry's plans forward, I would like to ask you what the adjustment period has been like since you have taken office and what you've experienced so far.
It's been a very interesting past month, definitely. I've been grateful for the people that I've met. Clearly, there's a very professional team driving the Ministry of Education. And so it's been a lot of listening for me the past few weeks, a lot of asking questions. I recognize that the Ministry of Education, Culture, Science, and Technology is very, very large. And so there's a lot going on. What we want to be able to do is to look at what's there. We know that we have had a lot of questions, a lot of people asking to dialogue with us, and we've started that process, and we recognize there's a lot of work to be done to try to be able to deliver education that is, education services that are of high quality to our nation. Yeah. So I've had an interesting month.
So, you know, and let's not neglect to mention that jumping in at this point where we are in an unprecedented environment where it's not even talking about how relevant, how any descriptives you can use for the type of education, it's just getting the children access to education during this time. Can I get just kind of a synopsis as to whether you have analyze the situation that's currently being rolled out and what thoughts there are about possibly changing?
I guess by the situation you're talking about distance learning.
Distance learning, work, yeah.
Well, the truth is, guys, that right now distance learning is our best option. It's our only option. We need to be able to unite in the efforts of the Ministry of Health and Wellness to make sure that we do our part to keep safe, to keep our children safe, to keep our teachers safe, to keep all stakeholders as safe as possible. We recognize that you said it, that this pandemic is unprecedented, and we do understand enough to know that people move the virus. And so the less movements that we can do, the better. Yeah. And that's why we've made the decision to continue with distance learning into the foreseeable future until the Ministry of Health and Wellness has directed us that it's safer for students and teachers to return to the classroom. As far as how effective the process has been, it would be difficult to give a blanket statement there, simply because it's been working differently for different schools and even at different levels. I'm sure that you've gotten that feedback as well. I know that you spoke with teachers a few days ago, and they really represented the truth of it. We have had some communities, and by communities, I mean the principals, the teachers, the parents, the students, where really, regardless of how easy the initial idea was, they were able to jump in. They recognized the fact that, okay, we need to change. The important thing is that learning needs to continue, and we need to figure out how we're going to do this. And so they jumped in and they started. And we've had some learning communities where there was a hitch. There was I don't know how to do this. And, maybe it was within the school, maybe it was the principals and the teachers who were like, wait a minute, I don't know how to do this. And I'm just learning how to use WhatsApp. What do you mean I have to use Zoom? What's Zoom? Yeah. And so little by little, we've had people learning. And then sometimes you have the principal and the teachers who are learning, and the parents going, we can't do this. So it would be difficult and probably unfair for me to say across the board, this is how it's been for everyone, because the results have been different. What is admirable is the fact that there have been so many consistent and committed efforts to continue the learning process. And I think that is what we need to use to build on as we move forward.
From the outside looking in all fairness, I think one of the things that perhaps one can assume is that the issue of, or the levels of disparities will be magnified when you think of access to education from a village, a very rural village, to perhaps a more modern school within Belize City, for example. And since we are approaching almost a year later, as much as it is important to keep some form of learning going, it's going to cause an issue whenever we reach the end of this pandemic to kind of play that catch-up. Are there any thoughts given to address what perhaps is taking place in rural communities versus what we know to be the reality here in the city?
A lot. It's something that we are thinking about very much. And I want to address that from two perspectives. The first is that, yes, we're looking at all the ways that we can ensure that distance learning can continue in an effective way in the rural communities. That's very important. We're actually looking at some new ideas, just different ways that we can bring the learning process forward for those communities. That's definitely high on our list of priorities right now. The other aspect to look at, though, is the fact that I would really want us to move away, if possible, from just looking at it as students are going to be behind, because the reality is that we have to see that academic focus has shifted, and really I think it's shifted forever. We are no longer going to be able to continue to gauge academic success by just testing. Everybody goes and sits a paper test, and if you pass, that means, and if you pass the highest, that means you're the best student. We are really looking at a time that is so unprecedented in that it's going to have ramifications and ripple effects on our education system forever. That's the truth of it. Students are developing skills in so many other ways in areas that were unforeseen. Months ago, last year, this time, we had no clue, none whatsoever. And, just the personal skills, the social skills, the technological skills that are being developed are things that we will have to weigh in and utilize as we move forward. This is a good time for us, and it's been a difficult time, without question, for everyone. As a new administration team, the ministers, me, the new chief, we've all been looking at so many different issues and so many different areas, but we recognize that this is also a really important time for us, and we can do things like, for example, internally, this is a good time for us to look at curriculum. This is a time for us to look at, what is the relevance? I'm not saying we're going to be starting over. I'm not saying we're throwing away things that we've been working on for so long, but I'm saying that this is a time for us to be able to push the reset button on different things. And one of those things is, what do we consider to be academic success? And what do we consider to be, when you talk about being behind, what does that mean really? Maybe we're going to be changing some standards. It's definitely not going to be the same. And as we work toward the process of returning to school safely, we recognize that when we return to school, school will be different on all counts, on all levels. We will have changed personally, our families will have changed, our society will have changed, our schools will have to change too.
Yeah. And the children.
Yes, absolutely. These children have been affected, just the whole social experience of it, having to learn how to manage when they're learning on their own, when they have to, send a picture via WhatsApp to a teacher, or they're filling out packets and the parents are sending in, but they don't get immediate response. So they don't know whether or not what they wrote is actually correct or wrong. So, and how do you move forward if you're not sure if you did this thing right? Suppose you're continuing and you got it wrong. There's so many issues, so many concerns about what we have, that we really, really have to find ways to make sure that the learning process continues and that it's as effective as possible, and not let the children feel like it's their fault, that they're going to suffer, because that's not what we want. It's not it's nobody's fault. We're all making the best of what is, in the words that so many have said before, what is an unprecedented situation. But we need to continue and we need to work. We need to hold everyone accountable for their part, and do the best that we can with what we have.
Yeah. And as you mentioned that, it just occurred to me, I suppose, that when you're speaking about possibly changing standards and things, before we even get there, given that we're now a year into the pandemic, we've been looking, you've been hearing from the stakeholders, the teachers and the parents about certain difficulties, but at the end of the day, how have with all of these changes that have been introduced since last year, how have we actually been measuring the success of the students? Has the ministry, are they still doing the traditional testing and the traditional tests and looking at things in a traditional manner? Or, how is it that we gauge what's the best way to move forward?
Well, traditional is thrown out the door.
Yeah.
There is no way, right? So yeah, assessments are no longer traditional. We have had to change formats. A lot of very clever teachers in schools have been discovering all these apps that you can use for quizzes, and they're different. Of course, people are using Google Classroom, they're using Edmodo, they're using Moodle, they're using Zoom for lessons. Some schools are using Microsoft Teams. We have a couple schools who have developed their own platforms. So those who who have dived into the technology pool are using apps to assist them with collecting work and with returning, assessing and sharing results. So that's happening. And those who are still on the paper trail, so to speak, need to use the papers, need to, collect and the teachers check and they return. And that process clearly, obviously neither one is perfect. There are pros and cons each way. The paper way, obviously there's a delay. A lot of schools have been utilizing WhatsApp. So teachers, I'm sure you've heard this all already, right? They've created WhatsApp groups with the parents. They've developed closer communication with parents so they can give feedback, because that's the important thing. The process isn't just teaching. If you want to ensure learning, there has to be that cross. And if I'm teaching and I can't see you and I can't hear from you, I can't see from your face if you're understanding me. You can't say, but teacher, I don't get it, or teacher, is this correct? Obviously, the process is impaired. So the whole process has changed, and the assessment process is no longer traditional. Even the reporting process can no longer be traditional, right? The report card, the way that it used to be, doesn't exist anymore. It hasn't existed so far for this academic year, and I can't predict. I don't know what will happen, but where we are right now is at a place where we had to change it.
So it sounds...
we're working right now actually on revising the appraisal process for teachers, because teachers are working, right? And we need to be able to have a way to determine, to record, this one is doing really well, this one is on target, this one is responsive, this teacher is very effective in these ways. And when you're delivering distance learning, there's a different set of things that you're looking for.
Yeah, it's so pedagogy that they were never taught before. And I don't think we've discussed that. Teachers are in their own learning curve in trying to deliver online education. And that's a point I wanted to touch on, because when we talk about education, the primary focus should always be the children. But let's not be naive. There are a lot of other undertones that must take place in negotiations. One, it's working along with the unions as a ministry. There's also the management of schools itself when you're talking about primary level. And then, of course, as you move up, it expands with principal associations, and it moves into the tertiary level as well. So tell me, what has been the plan, or what has been put in place to get all these people on board to think of what the next year potentially will look like for education in Belize?
Well, I mentioned a little bit earlier that we've had, since week 1, we've had different groups reaching out and saying, we would like to meet, we would like to talk. And we have been, bit by bit, scheduling meetings and having conversations with these various groups. In the beginning, it's really just introduction, and it's really just finding out what's happening, what are your key issues, what are your concerns, how can we work together. We have to work together. We have a 100-day agenda for our ministry, and this is not just for education, but for education, culture, science, and technology, because that is the scope of our ministry. ministry now. And one of the priority, actually number one on that agenda, is the formation of a COVID-19 education task force. And that's something that will be completed by next week.
Who's going to be on the task force?
Representatives of the same groups that you spoke about just now.
Okay.
We're reaching out so that we will have people from primary ed, people from secondary, people from tertiary. We'll have someone from the unions there. We'll have community stakeholders. We're going to have someone from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. So we're looking at having key representatives so that this group will be able to continue the work towards preparing for us to reopen safely.
Mm-hmm. And what about parents? Because I think if there's ever a time where parents have always been a stakeholders, and the level of involvement differs, but this is a time where now they are not only being asked, they have to participate in education because the children are at home. How do you get their concerns noted? Because we don't have a national association. Many schools may have parent, what do you call them, associations, but
parent
nothing really.
Associations, that sort of thing, but not formal.
Yeah.
Well, the good thing is that many of those same stakeholder representatives that I mentioned just now are parents. Mm-hmm. The reality is that many of us, me too, we are parents who are dealing with the concerns at different levels. So just already over the past few weeks, as we have met and we have spoken about different things, sometimes, you're wearing the teacher hat, sometimes you're wearing the parent hat. Or sometimes, it depends on the perspective that you have. And so we have already been taking into consideration the parent feedback. Some schools have active, like you said just now, groups where they do reach out and they do get feedback from the parents, and they have already been able to share where that's coming from. So when we sit and talk, it's not just, well, this is how we feel as the school, but this is the response that we've been getting from parents. Mm-hmm. Really, technology in a way has made it easier for everyone to reach out. Yeah. So we have also been, getting feedback from parents.
Yeah. But it's the cost too. It's the cost of technology for some people. And when you consider things like data plans and or installing Wi-Fi, if you have access to it, these are added expenses that both households with children and teachers also must assume. So let me just get some clarity when you talked about the assistance or working on rural areas especially. Is there going to be considerations for assisting in the cost of the technology that we must employ to keep education going?
We do need to take those things into consideration, yes. The previous administration had arranged for tablets to be bought, learning devices. The first distribution of those happened already. The second distribution will be happening within the next couple of weeks, right after school reopens. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, we also need to look, because you have to make sure that if I will be able to give you a device, that it's a device that you can use. It needs to be relevant. If access, equity, and quality are the three things that we are working toward, access is the first one, right?
Yes.
So that is a very real concern. It's something that we have been looking at and something that we'll continue to be working with, for those communities. I am hopeful that over the next few weeks we'll be able to reach out to some other partner associations to be able to, and once we have that, we'll be able to share those plans with you. But we have some ideas on different ways to reach some of the most rural communities and to try to get them engaged in distance learning in more effective ways.
And Well, just going back to one of the earlier questions that I was kind of having is that, you know, at the end of the day, how is it that the ministry will, before even ensure, I suppose, measure success? You know, we spoke earlier about changing the traditional methods of assessment, but from the ministry's perspective, at least, what will be the targets for each, you know, student at each level, at tertiary, primary, or even the secondary school levels?
Well, there are learning targets, right? There are goals set in the curriculum. So we know that by the end of this level, you should have accomplished this. Those things are already there. The challenge, and I guess maybe what you're wondering about, is whether we will have our usual testing. Are we looking at, you know, the PSC, for example? And that's really not something that we haven't said officially, you know, oh yes, we will have the PSC for 2021.
Yeah, just.
But really that.
No,
Sorry?
no, I was just saying that that's more or less exactly what I was going. If we were looking at different ways of you know, establishing how students will have met those targets that the ministry sets.
Yeah, it's really so difficult because we can't continue with standardized testing the way it's been done for years. And it kind of brings us to a point where, as I mentioned before, maybe we need to reevaluate. Maybe we don't need to continue standardized testing the way that we always did, while we have to take into consideration the fact that it has served a purpose. It's just so different. And right now, the most important thing that we can continue to do is to keep open minds. We have to be able to continue to work, and we bear in mind something that you said earlier, Marlene, which is at the heart of it, the student is the most important person. It's not about a system. It's not about me or you. This is about the student in the classroom, even if it's a virtual classroom. Are our learners learning? Are they progressing? There's some areas where I think that we might find that students are actually moving faster, because some students are able to, you know, maybe you'll have someone who is a gifted math student, for example, and is able to jump ahead because my brain works faster, so I can move on. Now, how we can do across the board evaluation of that at this point, we don't have that in place. A new process of assessing across the board, we're not there yet.
So these are things that I'd imagine your new team that you're putting together are going to define. Let me get into one of the hot topics here in looking at the status of teachers. There has been much speculation, and not even speculation at this point. We know we are in an economic crisis. We know the public wage bill is excessively high. We know a part of that public wage bill is accounting for teacher salaries and additional costs associated with the education. Has there been any discussion exploring what will take place, whether or not there will be some change in the salaries that teachers receive?
Not yet. No, and not with me. I do know that one of the things that we need to look at, and this is really not for the teachers, but for the Ministry of Education specifically, is we are looking at really a reform of the entire ministry. We recognize that the ministry is bureaucratic and top-heavy, and we want to be able to ensure that we are, as a ministry, working effectively, that everyone who is working efficiently. So that's a big part of our responsibility right now.
So let me just clarify there. When you say top heavy, is it people who are working in the ministry itself? That's what you mean?
Yeah, we have to look at our entire system. You know, we do. We really need to make sure that because it's, if we're expecting teachers on the ground to be working every day, we also need to ensure that everyone who is a part of the ministry is also actively engaged every day. That's only fair. So we have to look at all our areas as we move forward. That's our reality.
And is there any signal from government that, and I mean central government, that in terms of the Ministry of Education, that you'll be receiving any sort of financial or some sort of support that will help some of the initiatives and some of course, the burdens that have been faced by the schools and, of course, the ministry in general?
Things are hard.
Yep. I half expected that answer, but you can keep it.
This is a hard time. Right now, we're doing the best with what we have. We're trying to see how the resources that we do have access to right now, how we are using them as efficiently as possible. And that's why we have to change some of the ways that we think and some of the ways that we address problems. You know, if I keep doing the same thing the same way over and over, and I expect a different result, I am insane. If I am looking at problems always from the same perspective, I'm never gonna solve those problems. So what we need to do is we need to begin to change our approach. We need to change perspective. And that's really what, as a new team, we want to be able to do. We want to be able to change perspective. We want to be able to look at things from a different way, kind of step back a bit and say, all right then, so, you know, maybe if we try this way, maybe we will be able to be more successful. We have to do things differently. And so I think over the next few months, maybe that's some of what you'll begin to see is bit by bit, we'll try to begin to make some changes and hopefully they will trickle down into things that will be more effective for our people. Because access, equity, and equality, those are the focal points of everything. That's what we want. We need to make sure our students have access to education. We need to make sure there is equity in education. Everyone should have access, and everyone should have access to quality education. So that's everybody. That's, yes, the rural communities you mentioned, but also those students who have special learning needs. That's critical. We have to find ways to reach those students also. You know, so the work that's ahead of us is huge in scope.
I think definitely acknowledging that there is a lot to tackle. And so let's take the opportunity to kind of break it down into individual levels. Let's start at the top with the higher education that's available in Belize. The end of last year, we saw challenges with the national university. We know that financially they are taking a hit. University students can't pay to go to school. The university needs to pay their staff. They rely heavily on a subvention from government as well. To be able to cover some of these costs. Let's talk about what we know there and what the plan is.
Well, we know what you just said, what we know. We also know that their subvention hasn't increased in years. And so we need to look at that because the university does need our help. This is our national university. We need to work with them. So as we work towards preparing budgets, we have to find innovative ways, and we have to see whether we can increase funding to the university, if that will be possible.
And let's move on to secondary school and what work is being done there. What are the ideas or goals that you have in the near future?
Well, right now we're working, developing a relationship with BAPS. So far, we've been speaking with BAPS in particular because we've been working towards looking at CXC issues. What CXC will be like for 2021 is still something that's not completely set yet. And there have been questions and areas that's been a priority. So we've been working on that. And the Principals Association at secondary schools has been very open, and we're looking forward to developing a stronger relationship with them as we move forward, so that we can recognize what are their priorities and what are the ways that we'll be able to assist them. As I said, just in the past few weeks, the priority area that we've been working on with them is the issue of planning for and finding out where everyone is and what their concerns are in regards to CXC 2021.
Is it still that the government is paying for as many as 6 CXCs for each secondary student? Is it 6?
No. What we're looking at this year is paying for 3.
3, okay.
Yes. Yeah. Because we recognize that there are fewer students, students are sitting fewer exams. And well, obviously there are concerns because CXC, the 2020 results were not at all the way the results usually are. And so there's been a lot of feedback from that and a lot of concerns that have been expressed. And Belize has been vocal in expressing their concerns to the regional council as well. And we have been able to get feedback from our students, from our teachers, from our parents regarding what Belize as a country would want to see done for the 2021 exams, which we've sent on to CXC. And so we're waiting to hear now, because CXC has been collecting feedback from all the territories. So we're waiting to hear now what's going to be the position moving forward there.
And how has, just as again as we were talking, it also occurred to me, how has the ministry been dealing, I suppose, at the secondary and even above, with schools, technical focused schools, because those would, I imagine, be much more difficult to deal with online, because it's all about practicality in most or several cases. So what has the experience been like with offering support and getting feedback from those institutions?
The IT vets have been under such a challenging experience. I'm really hopeful that as we move forward, that we'll be able to engage them in different ways and revitalize their programs, try to do more with injecting innovative ideas for them, because it has been a difficult time for the various IT vets in the district. It's been hard.
Yeah. Now, let's move on to primary school, where we have most of our students at this time, and tell us what are some of the priority action areas that have been identified.
With the primary schools, I think that, again, access overall, because with the secondary schools, there's the natural tendency to think, okay, the students are older, they're more inclined, they're more willing to or more able to utilize technology. Yeah. With the primary schools, it's harder, because if you're going from the babies on, they will be less likely to have their own devices. Or if they're in households where devices are shared, chances are the youngest one is the last one who gets to use the device. That's so true. And so would get the least access time on any kind of technological platform. So with primary schools, the first priority there is access. We need to make sure that in the different schools that the systems and the ways of engaging the students is something that's ongoing and it's happening. And mentioned earlier that really we have a variety of ways that people have approached this. And in some cases within schools, we even see different things. We see some teachers who are more technological, who have dived in and they're, setting up they're making their own videos and sharing their videos. What we want to be able to do is to continue the development of an e-learning platform that actually has been started already and begin to focus that so that it can be something that can be used for all primary school students, so that we will have a platform where actually the e-learning platform is being constructed for all our levels, period, right? Where you would be able to sign in. This would be something that would be countrywide. You'd be able to sign in and you can access your lessons every day. Okay. So if I am a standard 2 student, doesn't matter where I am in the country, I can go in and I can get my math lessons for this week. And it's the lesson, it's the topic, the teaching part of it. There's a video there, there's practice work for me to do, and then there's some form of assessment that's there for me to do. That's something that we're working toward. It's not ready yet, but we're moving towards that down the road so that everyone will be able to have access to education.
I perhaps should have started the other way, because I think the 2 other areas yet to explore do require more time, but we're running out of it very quickly. So, or little learners, or beginning learners, preschoolers, or early childhood education.
Early childhood.
And let's not forget our special needs student as well.
Preschoolers are, they're going to be the ones who will be amazing, in a few years, because they're like now born and knowing how to use a mouse pad and a touchpad. It's amazing. Yeah. But we have noted how creative the early childhood teachers have been in trying to use the videos and the ways to reach out to their babies. And we know that the lack of social interactions, if you will, is really hard for them, because children learn from seeing other children. They learn from being in the classroom so much at that age, that's how they begin to understand the most basic of things, sharing, how to open my food container. When you're at home, everybody, mama will feed you. So we know that it's so difficult for early childhood education. It's difficult for those teachers. It's difficult for the parents, but they're such a vulnerable age group. We need to make sure that we protect our babies. So we're not forgetting them at all. And it's the same with the special needs population. We don't have enough teachers in this country who are fully prepared, who are trained at this point, who know how to adjust lessons for those students who need the adjustments. Unfortunately, I really believe that to be true. Everyone has some level of special education training, yes, but you need more than just a basic course. You need the basic course, and you need some common sense, and you need a lot of heart, and you need to be able to transfer. This is what everybody else is doing, but this child can't do this same lesson in this same way. So how do I take that lesson and I modify it for this person? And how do I do that in a distance learning format? That right there is the challenge with the special ed students. And while we do have some teachers who are doing this, we have some places where it's happening, and I commend those people. We need to do a lot more of that. We need a lot more schools to be inclusive. We need a lot more schools to be aware of the fact that it needs to be done. It's not just saying it. It's not just saying, oh yes, we are inclusive. No, you need to live it. You need to walk the walk here. That's a big deal. That's a hugely important situation for us to look at. So everything that we do moving forward, we have to recognize that I said three keywords earlier. I said access, I said equity, and I said quality. That's equity. Every student deserves to be able to continue learning, regardless of level, regardless of capacity. And we need every school and every teacher to be appreciative of that fact. So that one is a big one, and we have a lot of work to do there.
Yeah, that is true. And I know this morning we merely scratched the surface of all the things that need to be discussed when it comes to education. But it was very important that we kind of get an understanding of where you are 1 month in, and definitely welcome the future conversations where we can dive into these topics more specifically. Thank you so much, CEO, for joining us this morning.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. It's only been 4 weeks. We have a lot to do.
All right, and we appreciate you sharing what you have put on your plan so far. Stay safe.
Thank you. You too.
All right. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we're going to focus on the private sector and their thoughts on economic recovery. That's coming up in a few. Stay tuned.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service. Technology is ubiquitous, and it's transforming how, when, and where we work. Fulltech Systems is placing award-winning devices in the hands of information workers, allowing them to work without compromise in a world without wires, to innovate, create, and to maximize productivity anytime, anywhere, satisfying the needs of the desk-centric remote and field worker and every other worker in between. We are providing the industry's best devices to businesses going through the process of digital transformation. Partner with us today to provide the solutions that will allow your employees to work effectively and efficiently to enhance your customers' experience. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
Every day, young persons are infecting older and high-risk family members and friends with the COVID-19 virus. This Christmas could become the super spreader event we've all been afraid of. The end result is suffering and a horrible death. Please, do not let a couple of hours of fun cause a lifetime of mourning and pain.
Practice physical distancing, wash hands often, and wear your mask properly. Staying home this Christmas will ensure many more with your loved ones in the years to come. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
As one of the largest cable and internet providers in Belize, CBC strives to provide our customers with the highest standards of quality, value, and service in all aspects of cable TV and internet. Monitoring our systems closely, our technicians combine creative planning and state-of-the-art technology with years of experience and training to develop and provide the most reliable and advanced cable and internet service to exceed your expectations. For CBC and our team of talented engineers, technicians, and customer service representatives, delivering less than the very best is never an option.
Miss Belize.
The new Miss Universe Belize will be announced live Saturday, January 9th, right here on Channel 5, starting at 3 p.m. Find out who will be representing the jewel at the next Miss Universe pageant.
And we are back. And if you're joining us now, we are just getting our second conversation started. And we are shifting gears from talking about education to talking about the economy. And we are going to be speaking about a recovery plan for the way forward for the private sector. And joining us for our conversation this morning, we have Marissa Longsworth, who is the president of the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Marlene. Good morning, Gavin. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing great. And thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for inviting the Chamber to participate in your discussion.
So it's a new year, and we are more than a year now into the COVID-19 pandemic, and we've been feeling the effects, of course, all of us over the past few months. So let's just start our conversation by talking about, or in a nutshell, about some of the hopes that we have for recovery for the new year before we get into some of the more specific details.
Well, the business community, I think by nature, has to be optimistic and hopeful. Businesses, once they plan to stay open and stay alive, they have to, they really don't have a choice but to try to recover. Businesses can individually try to recover in themselves and serve their own customers and their clientele. However, when we speak about economic recovery, that speaks to us about the business community as well as whatever is happening nationally, coming together and being able to strategize as to what the plans are going to be for the upcoming year. As it relates to 2021, the general feel on the ground from the members is that we are optimistic about the new year, particularly the bounce back of tourism. That is a hope. It's a little out of our control. So even as we have this discussion about economic recovery, it makes it a little bit difficult because recovery would suggest that we've reached the end of something and now we are going to make efforts to move on from it. And as it relates to COVID, we're really not sure where we stand at this point in time. There are some industries that are pretty strained as well. We're having, issues in the sugar industry that had to do with natural circumstances as well that has sort of put the sugar industry at a disadvantage. So when we speak about hope, I think that hope, we will have to temper our expectations of hope a little bit and just really try to keep the economy running, keep the engine of income running. Also to try to develop and maybe learn our lessons from 2020 and be more shock resilient as a business community. That's even a hard request now because with the shocks of 2020, to become shock resilient in 2021 would sort of suggest that you have the cushioning or the padding in place to handle shock, which I am not certain that much of the business community has that, has those resources to deal with another major shock in this year. But what we want to do is just to minimize downtime. And through all our consultations, through all our partnerships, that's what we're going to be aiming for 2021. No matter what happens, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's another COVID or a continuation of COVID, our hope and our goals will be to keep things going, not to come to a lockdown again, and to minimize, of course, downtime, minimize decreases in productivity.
So let me just get some feedback from you. We had the Minister of State of Finance talk about the current situation, of the current status of the economy, looking at over 130% of GDP in debt. We also saw the contraction by 13%, I believe was the number he gave. I'm going off the top of my head here. So But Claire, 17. It was 17%. He said. Yes, thank you. You know, I think it's important for us to put this all into perspective, because while we can always say it's challenging, it's unprecedented, this is beyond just a bad situation. This is a worrisome situation. And I want to hear from the private sector just what your thoughts are and what that puts into motion for you guys and what you pay attention to.
Well, the issue that you highlighted in terms of massive public debt, for example, if we go back, say, 10 years in the Chamber's advocacy levels, the Chamber has always, without fail, advocated for aspects such as fiscal policy rules, which a fiscal policy rule, for example, would be that no government of Belize must ever go over 60% debt to GDP ratio. And so everything we do is to prevent ourselves from going over those aspects. When we look back again, 10 years, comprehensive tax reform has always been one of the lobbying topics for the Chamber. And what COVID has brought as it relates to economic recovery, because we did a study on this in our meetings with the new government to sort of highlight what are the major issues. And in fact, in our studies and our analyses, not much has changed in terms of what we lobby for. What has changed is more so the urgency of it. What has changed is more so the implications of not dealing with our problems. Because we have our backs against the wall as a country, we are now out of money to borrow, right? So when the debt to GDP was under 100%, we were still lobbying and saying this is too high. It's a dangerous cliff for us to be on. However, we still had access to more money to borrow. So even though the warnings are coming, life continued as usual, business continued as usual, and the country was able to receive funds. Unfortunately, what's happening now is that because of our massive public debt, because of our record, our ratings and rankings in terms of paying back these the debt that we owe, we are now finding ourselves in a position where we are unable to borrow any further. And so what that does is it prevents any stimulus from making its way into the economy, or if any makes it at all, it's going to be limited stimulus. And remember that we are now under new management as a country. And so the question also becomes whether new management would have or will manage the resources differently than the management that was in place for the last 12 years. Even in those last 12 years, the business community has always advocated, and we sit on over, if my memory serves me rightly, over 50 committees, commissions, boards, and so on that we've been appointed to, whether civil society, government, etc. So there's no question as to whether the Chamber's voice has been out there. It has for several years. But remember as well that the Chamber does not chair these committees. It does not make up the majority voting of these committees. And many times our representatives became disgruntled and jaded because their recommendations were not being listened to. And so when we look at how we tackle the contextual situation that we have right now, the approach is simply just going to have to be more aggressive. But the things that we've been saying, you can pick up a document from 10 years ago and the lobbying is very, very much the same, save for matters that are specific to COVID, which is a unique phenomenon for the country and the world.
And I know even at the start of COVID, you'd put out a white paper kind of outlining just some of the recommendations that you thought would help the business sector survive. With that in mind, though, has there been any assessment from the Chamber itself to look at the status of businesses after what has been year one of the pandemic? I imagine we hear stories of businesses that close down permanently. Some have downsized. What's the assessment that you do to understand, to put forward the right picture of the private sector?
You know, Marlene, one of the major issues that we face, and I think it may be a Belizean, maybe even a Caribbean issue, is that persons don't like to provide data. They don't want to provide numbers in terms of money lost. They don't want to provide numbers in terms of businesses which have closed. What we know is anecdotal. We've heard a lot of the horror stories. We've also, I mean, it's in terms of numbers, what is most clear to us is our difficulty in maintaining membership. Over last year and this year, we've had to put some incentive programs for membership. And I don't get the impression necessarily that it has to do with businesses, you know, abandoning the chamber. It has to do with businesses saying, I can only afford to spend so much on my overheads, and membership organizations are not one of my major overheads. How can we compete with your light bill or your water bill or your telephone bill that you need for the everyday running of your business? And so what we are seeing is that we have had a reduction of membership. And the anecdotal data is showing that businesses have closed. If they haven't necessarily closed, because remember, maybe we're not going through an insolvency process or a bankruptcy process, possibly because our laws don't really provide for it. But what we are seeing is that business owners are going into other type of work. Maybe they might get a part-time job here, or, you know, they're working along with someone else. And therefore they're not putting time into independent businesses for themselves anymore. And that's sort of the indications that we're getting as it relates to the economy. For example, the tourism industry, one of our members is the BTIA. And of course, we've heard from the BTIA that many tourism businesses have literally just gone dormant in a wait and see approach. Some of them have had to sell their properties. But in terms of data, that is always very difficult. And I use even this opportunity to appeal to those who receive our surveys to participate in them, because it allows us to advocate better using numbers, using statistics to back up what we are putting forward.
And, you know, just going off of that topic and of Marlene's question, I think we can also speak specifically about the issue of employment, which of course has been a really hot button issue since the beginning of the pandemic and since the beginning of, you know, the first hard lockdown that we had. Has the chamber received a lot of feedback, you know, after, you know, going to year one about what the issues have been like since sort of the economy has opened back? Have they been able to maintain staff? Have some who they initially let go? Has their chamber made recommendations to perhaps the government in terms of maybe changes that can be made to the existing laws that might allow for employers to maybe receive some sort of relief with all of the issues that COVID has brought up?
Well, certainly in last year, we presented 2 public documents, the first of which was what we call the Business Pantry, which was a stimulus program request of the government for there to be some amount of wage supplementation and that sort of thing. What we suggested later on in the year, I believe it was August or September, which has since been provided to the new government as well, is what we call confidence building measures. And those confidence building measures were not for stimulus, not for any money or funding to the MSMEs or business community at large, but it was really to try to help or to propose to the government that we align what the business community is doing with what the government is doing. Because a big part of recovery for any business, a big part of recovery or even doing business for any business is predictability and clarity of your regulatory environment. And so predictability comes when we look at doing consultations where the private sector is involved from the very start in how the policies are put together, how they are worded, and how they apply to the business community. One concern that the Chamber has put in writing and has stated in a meeting with the Minister of State currently, the current Minister of State, is that the Chamber of Commerce nor the BTIA or other sectoral industry-style member organizations were invited to sit on the Economic Recovery Advisory Team of the government. And that is a big concern for us because although we are proud of our members who sit individually on that Economic Recovery Advisory Team, those persons are not there in a position to represent the wider business community, nor do they report back to or get their advice from the wider business community in formal channels. And so if it is that we are to cooperate and participate with the government in a way that allows for businesses to be in stride with the government, because, and I say this because if you look at some of the SIs that were passed last year, remember at one point every week or 2 weeks we were getting a new SI, and we had businesses freaking out and calling the Chamber. What does this mean for me? How does this work for me? Police are coming into my store and telling me X, Y, and Z. If the Chamber is an active part of actually developing the protocols, and I say that even in the consultation process of the last government, we would stay up during nights and weekends to put language together for those SIs. And when the SIs came out, the language was not there, which meant that all the research and so on that we had done to prepare ourselves to inform the business community of what was to come ended up not coming in those SIs. And so one must be able to understand that if we want smooth running of business, if we want that when tourists are in our restaurants, you don't have police coming in and abusing the owner of the restaurant, abusing the staff and the tourists, then what we have to do is jointly develop our business health protocols. And we have put that on the table. We're very grateful as it relates specifically to health, that the Ministry of Health has invited us to sit on 2 committees that will assist with having a business perspective on health matters. But as it relates to the overall economic advisory, Gavin, we're very concerned that we might not be at the table. Remember too that there is an Economic Development Council and a public-private desk, which is under review. We lobbied for those bodies to exist from about 10 years ago, maybe 8 to 10 years ago. We lobbied for those bodies to exist. We would like to know and be reassured and to be called to the first meeting of whatever those bodies, the form that those bodies will take under this new management of the country. But nevertheless, the overall point is that in order for the business community to participate, in order for the business community to cooperate with whatever the government intends to put in place for 2021 for economic recovery, then the business community has to be at the table, listened to, because we've been at the table and not listened to, but we have to be listened to very clearly, and they have to rely upon the many hours of research, expertise, and skill that goes into whatever we bring to the table.
That's a valid point. I think it may have escaped many people that the Chamber, as a representative of the Chamber, was not named to that recovery team. You noted that you did make a point of making it known. Has there been any response to have you included moving forward? You as the Chamber.
Not in the economic recovery team. I mean, we made the point verbally in a meeting, and we also made it in writing. There could be some impression of the Chamber from times past, I suppose, as to what the Chamber's role has been on committees that seem to not produce much. But I reiterate again that the chamber is but one seat holder on these committees. The chamber is not a majority in itself, a majority vote holder on these committees. For the most part, the committees were majority government run. And for that purpose, there was a lot of the time where our suggestions did not make it into a reality. If we look back at the business pantry program, which was very public, if we look back at the confidence building measures, which were very public, one can see that maybe 10% of the recommendations, if that many, actually made it into a reality, actually made it into the real world. And those measures were intended to really be taken as wholesomely as possible to create a regime that the business community could actually work it within, and actually to make the chamber use the chamber. That's one of the things we've always said, use us. We have a secretariat, we have staff, we have membership that want to contribute to several issues. And so we're asking that the use of our resources and our research becomes a major part of what the government does. If the government is under-resourced in one aspect, maybe we have the resources to help to fill in there. And so, our appeal really is to bring us to that table and let us collaborate. And of course, this is not in any way discounting the new management of the government of Belize, with whom we've had a very short time to become acquainted. But of course, time waits on no man. And especially in 2021, time waits on no man. And so we are ready to see that immediate action on a national scale get going.
And I also want to talk a little bit about let's have this discussion on the industry level, because we've been talking about businesses and individual business owners, and we touched a little bit about the tourism industry. But moving forward into 2021, are there specific industries that are also looking, or that the chamber can say we're looking at possible or that the government ought to invest in? There could be possible expansion where there's a lot of optimism. And, on the other side of the coin, what are we, in terms of difficulties, what, from the industry standpoint, what is 21 looking like?
Well, as it relates to industries, they vary. For example, 2020 might have been a very good year actually for the BPO sector if we realize that sector actually flourished from some of what was lost from Jamaica and other countries. Even the chamber personally, if you look at what difficulties a business may have had in 2020. The chamber owns real estate on Coney Drive, prime real estate, which is available for rental. And one of the interests was from someone in the BPO sector. However, in order to inspect whether that piece of real estate is good for the company, the BPO sector, they needed to fly into Belize to inspect and to seal the deal as it relates to a lease. The closure of the airport for such a long time actually became a delay to being able to do business in what was a flourishing or still is a flourishing sector despite the pandemic. Yeah. And so we have to consider that various processes and various actions that may affect businesses who are strained or sectors that are strained also can affect sectors that are flourishing or have good opportunities during a time like this. As I mentioned, we have sugar, which has suffered for various reasons. Sugar is a huge form of foreign exchange. We have tourism, which is our dominant form of foreign exchange. Yeah. I think one of the biggest strains sectorally for pretty much every sector this year has been access to foreign exchange. Almost every sector, from services to commerce, they utilize foreign exchange for purchasing. Even within services, it may just be for purchasing your subscription to Microsoft Office or your subscription to a management software that you need.
Yeah.
And when those things become cut off from you because of a lack of foreign exchange, you suffer from a decrease in the quality of your service. You suffer from maybe a decrease in the number of licenses you can purchase, which means that less staff members are able to log on to your systems on a daily basis.
Yeah.
A direct result of that could be getting rid of the staff because they cannot function using your management software on a daily basis. And, you know, those are the sorts of things that really have affected the specific sectors that we've seen. I don't think that anyone has gone untouched in 2020. Some will bounce back sooner than others in 2021, but we would be surprised to know and to see how many of our general processes affect all businesses along within the business community. And so we have to be very careful and very strategic as well. That's also one thing that the Chamber has pushed for, is strategic action. I remember even last year when the government realized that the bills of the government were way more than we could afford, there was, for example, a 40% blanket cut across ministries. In the business world, that's not necessarily the way that you would deal with a crisis in the business world, not to do a blanket cutting of everything, but you would probably invest more in certain areas such as e-commerce, and as it relates to the government, you should invest more in health as one of your aspects, maybe education, so that the educational system doesn't collapse during a time like this. So strategic planning and strategic investment is one of the things that we will always push for on a business level, but also from a national fiscal management level as well.
So, you know, there's a lot to come, and some of the things that you noted, I know we have heard in campaign promises, and even after the election, hearing things of working on ensuring the ease of doing business or these processes become more efficient, and these have been points that the private sector and many others have been making for a long time. Let's bring it back to today, though. All eyes are on that House meeting that's happening on Friday. We know that two things in terms of looking, well, several things will take place, but of course, you're looking at the request for the emergency programs and facilities from the central bank. And we're also looking at the supplemental appropriations bill that will be introduced as well. What are your thoughts? What are some of the things that you are going to be paying attention for in these particular areas?
Well, you know, Marlene, you started out by touching on the ease of doing business. And actually, one of the aspects that will be passed in the House on Friday that we find very important to that goal actually has to do with the constitutional change to require judges to produce judgments within a certain amount of time. Yeah. If you remember rightly, the Ease of Doing Business Index, which of course has its own controversy at this point in time, but in concept is a good one. There is a measure for enforceability of contracts, right? Mm-hmm. Whenever someone does business in a jurisdiction, they want to be certain that they are able to recover in case any dispute or, you know, legal matter comes about during their time in a country. And so the fact that we had judgments of between 2 to 8 years outstanding from Supreme Court level to Court of Appeal level was not a good look for Belize. And so I think that directly as it relates to the Ease of Doing Business Index and rankings, that sort of move would have a direct impact on how Belize is seen on the world stage to investors who are concerned about or considering bringing millions of dollars into the country, and of course want to take millions of dollars out, not only in profit, but if they don't profit, they want to be able to at least recover and be restored to their original position. As it relates to your mention of the supplementary appropriations bill and the emergency programs facility that's being requested. At this point in time, the chamber has had to take a position to say that you have to give a new person a chance to get themselves in place. And I think at this point in time, we have seen and we've known from even before elections, and I mean, it's come to the point where, those that we look to for hope, maybe our leaders and politicians are telling us as it is that we're broke and we can't afford certain things, and we just need to come to terms with that, And so the thing is that we always encourage caution, or we always sound a word of caution to say, whatever you're doing, make sure that you're taking only what is minimally necessary. Don't go for more than what is necessary, and make sure that we have the mechanisms in place for transparency. I don't think the chamber at any point in time will have problems with the government spending money on programs once the expenditure is controlled, is traceable, transparent, and there is accountability. And so the thing is that, once those things can be shown and shown to the satisfaction of the business community and the community at large, I don't necessarily think that a government will have any issues there, because if this emergency facility, for example, is going to allot $1 billion towards small business grants, who are we to complain about that? As long as we can see that $1 million went to businesses who were actually deserving of that facility, and it went in a fast enough time for the purpose of providing some stimulus and rescue, because we talk about recovery, but businesses are still very much in rescue mode, needing rescue before we start to look at recovery.
All right. Well, I think that's a great point to kind of close us off on for today. Marissa, we appreciate getting this update from you, just kind of getting some perspective from the chamber as to what your thoughts are at this time. And of course, always happy to have you back on air.
Thank you both for having me this morning, and I'm always happy to be with you, so feel free to invite us on at any time.
All right. And there you have it. That was the president of the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry giving us the perspective of the membership organization on where we are with the economy and looking forward to some of the things that they hope would be on the agenda. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, it is to focus on
Miss Universe. We are going to
hear the excitement in your voice. All right.
Yeah, well, it's been a while, of course, since there's been a new one. So we're going to be talking all about the winner of Miss Universe, which is going to be revealed this weekend. And we're going to be talking about all the details of this year's pageant and how it's being done in the year of the pandemic. So please stay tuned. We will be right back.
It's a fact that you can access unlimited services with Smart. Tired of being measured or cut off when you need to be connected? It's a fact that when you sign up for Smart's Plus plan, you get unlimited talk, text, and unlimited data. And it's a fact that you can sign up with your group of up to 5 members for Smart's Share plans and up to 40 members for Smart's Enterprise plans for unlimited talk, text, and data. Smart has the true unlimited plans. That's a fact. Be smart and live smart.
Todos estamos en riesgo de contraer la COVID-19. por lo que es importante reconocer rápidamente los signos y síntomas de la infección. Los síntomas más comunes son fiebre, tos seca y cansancio o fatiga. Algunas personas también pueden tener dolor de garganta, dolores y molestias, congestión nasal o diarrea. Pero algunas personas también han reportado conjuntivitis, dolor de cabeza, pérdida de sabor u olor, sarpullido en la piel o un cambio en el color de los dedos de las manos o los pies. Los signos de alarma de emergencia que requieren atención médica inmediata son dificultad extrema para respirar, dolor constante y severo o presión en el pecho, confusión, dificultad para hablar o moverse, labios, rostro, dedos de las manos o de los pies azulados. Para mayor información, llame al 0800-664-2273. Protejamos nuestra salud.
If we are only as strong as our families, businesses, institutions, and the communities that surround us, then by giving businesses the power to grow, entrepreneurs the ability to expand, and by giving our families the right to own something, the Belize Bank gives you the power to build a nation, our nation. We are stronger together. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
Miss Belize.
The new Miss Universe Belize will be announced live Saturday, January 9th, right here on Channel 5 starting at 3 p.m. Find out who will be representing the jewel at the next Miss Universe pageant.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate your lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
And we'll be back in a few, so stay tuned. Thanks, Jen. Hey there, we know you have to head out to work shortly, but don't forget that you can stay tuned by watching us on our Facebook live stream. Find us at Open Your Eyes BC, and you can continue watching there. You can also download Facebook Watch on your streaming device, and you can watch at your own convenience.
And for all the behind-the-scenes fun, follow us on Instagram at OYE Belize. So,
find us
and follow us
today.
The new Miss Universe Belize will be announced live Saturday, January 9th, right here on Channel 5 starting at 3 p.m. Find out who will be representing the jewel at the next Miss Universe pageant.
And we're back.
It's all yours.
Yeah, if you're joining us right now, we're getting our conversation started all about Miss Universe Belize 2021, which is going to be revealed this weekend. Joining us, of course, to talk about this morning, we have our reigning Miss Universe Belize, Destiny Arnold. Good morning.
Good morning. You're not going to be able to say that for very long.
Right. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Just hanging in there like everybody else, trying to keep up with all of the changes.
And of course, you know, during your reign, of course, this has been one of the craziest times that all of us have had to live through. So
Yes.
before we get into the new Miss Universe, why don't we talk a little bit about the year that you've had?
Yes, well, it's definitely been a year like no other. Definitely not what I expected, but memorable nonetheless. It started off with just hitting the ground running, preparing for Miss Universe Belize. And it seems like as soon as I got back from Miss Universe, we got hit with the pandemic. So it was a lot of just navigating through the changes that the world was going through, trying to remain responsible and protecting our loved ones, mourning the ones that we have lost, and just trying to make the best of this time that I believe God gave us to just reflect on what we have in life, spend time with our family, take advantage of the technology that we have advanced over the years, and really just try to make the best of a dark situation and find that light within it.
Oh, look at us looking back at this moment where you were announced as Miss Universe Belize. Destiny, when you imagine someone else taking over the reign, what do you think will stand out the most for you? Of course, beyond being announced the winner.
Right. I think that the number one thing that I looked for as we were going through this process in the girl is her ability to connect with our people. I think it is very important for our queens to be approachable. Although they are a role model to young men and women alike, we still have to be able to just have a normal conversation. Have someone be able to sit down and just talk about life with you, because although we are put on this pedestal, we're still human, we're still going through life, and we're still dealing with the everyday issues that everyone else deals with.
Yeah. So this year, clearly things had to be a lot different. There was a point where I guess everyone just assumed there would be no pageant or there would be no selection of a Miss Universe. But then there's going to be an international one, so we got the ball rolling here. Tell us about that process.
Right. So in every country, it looks a little bit different because everyone has different protocols. Miss Universe actually postponed the pageant in 2020 to 2021. So as you know, we didn't have a Miss Universe pageant in 2020. Now, although that we are going through this pandemic, we still think it is important to carry on the tradition of selecting our queen to represent us on that stage this year. So we did it a little bit differently. We did a casting call. It included about 3 rounds. It started off with about 15 applicants, and then we narrowed that down to who would be able to interview with myself as well as the Miss Universe Belize committee. We then narrowed it down to 4 girls, and they were able to interview with our international panel of judges who came from places like India, USA, the UK, and Venezuela. And that's how we selected our final Miss Universe Belize, who has actually already been preparing secretly, doing photo shoots and training and things of that nature. I don't even know who the girl is, so
You don't know.
just like you all are.
I was about to start fishing for some clues there.
I have been like Nancy Drew in Inspector Gadget, just trying to figure out. And just when I thought I know who it was, it seemed like there was kind of like a deadlock, like kind of like a tiebreaker. So these girls are amazing, and it was really a neck-to-neck competition. So I really have no clue who it is, and it's killing me.
Well, I know I'm just, even though you know, the experience, of course, was going to be different. I'm wondering if, while you were watching some of those girls during that process, if it took you back to before you were crowned and sort of all of the preparation and what was going through your mind and all the hopes that you were having that you would win.
I think that I just kind of thought about how nervous they must be and just how they're having to adjust to the different ways of doing things, because traditionally you're preparing for a pageant, which I think is a little bit more nerve-wracking than just going through a course of interviews. But it really does prepare you for the Miss Universe stage, because a lot of people don't know that it's behind the scenes that matter. It's the day-to-day, how you carry on in your life, from every day when people are watching you on social media and just their encounters with you in person. Because you're there for about 1 to 2 and sometimes 3 weeks prior to the actual pageant, and they're watching your every move. That's when the competition starts, and that's when they really learn who you are and determine your ability to be Miss Universe. So it's although it was a little bit different, it still gives us an idea of who we should send up to that stage.
Yeah. You know, I mean, and there's a bit of opportunity in it too. As you are making this point, I imagine when you competed in the pageant, there's a limited amount of time that the judges and especially the public get exposed to you and what you're capable of. So this extensive interview process gives more time for people to learn and investigate and get a feel of the different candidates.
Right, you really get to look into who that person is and who they market themselves to be, because social media is a huge factor in the pageant process now. The international pageant bloggers, as well as the judges that aren't revealed until pageant night, are watching you. Even though they say that they don't, it's hard to believe that that's actually true, thinking of it this day and age and how much technology that we have.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, if you develop the right buzz, even if they try to ignore it, they can't.
Right, you can't. You can't ignore anything these days unless you're just completely off the grid.
So, okay, I have no idea. So you're going to give us some insight. What is it like to be to interview someone to be Miss Universe Belize? What are some of the questions that you would be asking of these ladies?
Well, I'm a bit of a tough critic when it comes to selecting someone. And that's just because I understand the responsibility and the weight of the crown during your reign. So I knew that I needed someone who was mentally, spiritually, and even physically ready. I think that preparation is key, that you would even have to start to prepare for this even before you decided to enter the pageant, because a lot of it is just mental. So the types of questions I would ask is, you know, how did you prepare for this pageant? What made you decide to enter this pageant? What would you like to see come out of this experience? How are you able to connect with people? What does the crown mean to you? Things of that nature. It's just really important for me to know how much passion, discipline, and drive you have behind the intent of becoming Miss Universe Belize, because it's much more than a crown. It's much more than being in the spotlight and gaining attention. You are literally representing an entire country amongst the countries of the world. So that's a lot to take on as a person.
Interesting. And I mean, yeah, carrying a country and all the hopes that we have when or representative goes up for the pageant. So what were some of the right answers then? So what were some of the things that people said in the interview that made you think, okay, great answer there?
Ooh, you know, that's a good question. I think that some were able to answer questions such as how will you be able to kind of assimilate to what's going on right now. And one person kind of just said that they're very pliable, they're flexible, and they're willing to learn, which is important because the learning curve is a key factor in just training and preparing for the pageant and the international stage. Kind of someone who wasn't, you know, dead set on what they wanted to do in the future, but they acknowledge that a lot of people don't know what they want to do tomorrow, or in 2 years, or in 3 years, and 5 years. And I actually admire someone's ability to just live in the moment and kind of take life as a day-to-day thing and not just living in the future, because when you live in the future, you forget to be grateful for what you have in the present. So there was a lot of different things that they've said that I really connected with and I found admirable.
Okay.
All right, and of course, I imagine that one of the characteristics that you're also looking for is just the ability to sort of handle that high pressure, intense situation that is, one, competing just in the Miss Universe Belize pageant, but also being able to compete in the big pageant internationally.
Right. As I said, technology is kind of a blessing and a beast at the same time. As you know, during my reign, I got hit with a lot of internet criticism after the pageant and even after the Miss Universe pageant. And that's something that she's going to have to deal with. Social media, I don't know if you agree, but I feel like Facebook and Instagram, that's kind of like our gossip column. Everything happens on Facebook and Instagram and other social media platforms. So you have to know how to respond to that. And that actually was one of my questions is are you one of those persons who will go on Facebook and go on a rant?
Yeah.
Do you air out your disappointments on a public platform, or do you battle silently and allow people to just see that process of handling disappointment, things that kind of uprooted your plans? Do you do it gracefully, or do you do it in a way that some people may not deem as beneficial to our country? Because it's important for us to be free of scandal. We are a small country, but we are mighty, and we do not show that might if we kind of blur the lines with negativity. So we want to make sure that every time that we're getting on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat that we are spreading positivity.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such a key factor now, you're right, in being able to maneuver yourself in the public world, but definitely on the online world, and deciphering between what is just people being negative and what's constructive criticism as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So tell us about how this reveal is going to work.
Yes, so I will be anxiously waiting with you this Saturday at 3 p.m. For our press conference and crowning, where the Miss Universe Belize 2021 will be announced. We will unfortunately have no guests at this press conference and crowning because we are following the regulations set forth by the Ministry of Health. With COVID-19, it's very important for us to act responsibly and make sure that we're protecting our loved ones as well as ourselves. So it's going to be a private ceremony, and then we will get to know who it is at 3 p.m. this Saturday.
Okay. And no clue, nothing.
No
hint.
I have my guess. Of course, I have my guess, but my guess still was going head to head with someone else, so I have no clue. And it's really, Romeo is so tight-lipped. It's amazing. I don't know how he does it.
I guess that's why he's not with us this morning. He was scared. They're training, yeah?
Yes, they're training, they're doing photo shoots, and I have no clue. The fact that the committee was able to pull this off is just amazing to me, because you know how we go. We know things.
Secrets in Belize are hard to keep.
But I don't know.
But here's another point, though, before we start to wrap it up. You know, the pageant world has changed so much. We talked about how important social media is and your online presence. But before we started the show, it's even just the type of women that are going up for the show. They're welcoming transgender persons. They're welcoming people of all sizes, heights. And it really just is embracing, I guess, kind of a more inclusive approach rather than the cookie cutter beauty queen from before. Did you see that in the application process, that people still stepped forward even though they wouldn't have been the stereotypical requirements of a beauty queen?
Yes, definitely. I think that the pageant world is definitely reflecting the true definition of beauty. They always say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. In different countries, we have different standards of beauty. Yeah. And I even think if we look back at our past queens, we have diversity.
Yeah.
We are truly a reflection of our diverse population. And you did see that in the application process. You saw all sizes, all colors, all educational backgrounds. You saw everything. And I think that that's really applaudable, because right now the standard of beauty is more inclusive. As you said, we're not saying that you have to be a certain color, wear your hair a certain way, make sure that your body looks a certain way. It's just all about how you carry yourself and how you exude that beauty that's within your interior.
I know. I totally agree. I think it sounds cliche, but that's just exactly what it is. A beautiful person very often has little to do with how they look, but just who they are. And sometimes those are things that no makeup or anything can hide or enhance. And Destiny,
exactly.
And Destiny, I think that's one of the things that people really gravitated to about you. You have such a warmth, and I think so relatable. And I know that your reign has been during a time where you couldn't have as much interaction. You know, if there's one thing, I don't want to say regret, but if there's one thing that perhaps you are sad or disappointed that you weren't able to do because of all the restrictiveness of the pandemic, what would that be?
It honestly would be not being able to just spending time with people. I couldn't just do what I plan to do, which is constantly flying out to Belize and remaining back and forth between there and LA to just spend quality time with people who supported me and showed me so much love throughout this process. I'm a people person, and I'm actually horrible with social media. I do not like being there. If you look at my social media prior to Miss Universe Belize, I probably posted once a month.
Yeah.
So becoming someone who had to utilize social media to publicize themselves, to getting hit with the pandemic where everything was on technology at that point, it was really hard for me. But I think that we just kind of made the best of it, and I had a lot of private conversations with people. So although I'm kind of like a silent person, I don't like to publicize everything I do during my reign. I just like to just do it because it's coming from the heart. You didn't see a lot, and I'm actually okay with that, because the people I've touched know how I touched them and how they've touched me as well, and that's what matters.
You also made some great progress. You became a brand ambassador as well for facial products, the Olivia Cuoto.
Yes, there's a lot of things that did get accomplished during my reign. Of course, you always want more. You always want to do more. But you know what? Sometimes life hits you, and you just have to kind of roll with the punches and fight back. And I think that's exactly what I did.
Okay. All right. So when you are talking to your grandkids many years from now, what will you tell them? What will you tell them about this experience as Miss Belize?
I would tell them that this experience taught me that it only takes that one step, that one time where you were courageous enough to actually pursue your dream. And as soon as you find that courage, you'll find victory on the other side. And I expect the same from you.
All right. Well, some other young lady will start her own journey tomorrow after she's announced at 3 p.m. Of course, we're going to have it live on Channel 5. And we'll be able to find out who our new Miss Universe Belize. Oh, on Saturday, I'm sorry. Yeah, why do I think it's Friday? On Saturday.
You want it to happen soon, too.
Miss Universe Belize will be crowned on Saturday at 3 p.m. Destiny, it has been a pleasure having you represent us. And thank you so much for always joining us and sharing the updates.
Thank you so much, and I'll see you live on Channel 5 Belize, 3 p.m. on Saturday.
All right.
Thank you so much. You guys have a good morning.
Okay.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. And with that, we are going to take our final break, and when we come back, we are going to have our wrap-up. So please stay tuned.
In these challenging times, the one thing that is certain is that the Belize Bank Limited is here for you. There is nothing more important than your health and safety, and we continue to make every effort to make banking safer for you. Our staff is working around the clock to make sure you can do your banking conveniently 24/7 using our mobile banking app and online banking and keeping ATMs up and running. We value your relationship with us and are here to provide the support you need. First responders are also out there 24/7. Thank you, healthcare workers, security forces, firefighters, caregivers. You are all appreciated. Stay safe. We will get through this together. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
Why, Tony?
Why, kid, what you going on, man?
I'm actually going to see because I need to buy a stack of them plastic plates and cups for my grocery shop because I run low.
Boy, I stopped importing that thing since April 15th, you know. And I just ran out to the last batch, must have been like 3 weeks back, you know.
Man, do I usually have anything? What are you going?
Check this, right? Under the new law, we ban all single-use plastics, so that the cups, plates, forks, spoons, and knives, all of that. Since April 15th, can't import none of them. Starting January 15, 2021, you can't manufacture them. April 15, 2021, you can't sell them. And after July 14, 2021, if you get catch with any other thing, you will get fined.
Me never know this. I guess I have to make some changes then. I have to make the customers know that anything not available. Anyways, bro. Thanks, man.
No problem, man. Take care.
Es un hecho que puedes obtener servicios ilimitados con Smart. ¿Cansado de que se corte la línea cuando más necesitas estar conectado? Es un hecho que cuando te suscribes al plan de Smart Plus, obtienes llamadas, textos y datos ilimitados. Y también es un hecho que te puedes suscribir con un grupo de 5 miembros al plan Smart Share y hasta 40 miembros al plan Smart Enterprise para llamadas, textos y datos ilimitados. Smart tiene los verdaderos planes ilimitados. Es un hecho. Sé Smart y vive de forma Smart.
And we're back.
Wrapping up our show after a bunch of great conversations.
Of course, and we want to thank everyone who joined us this morning, from the CEO in the Ministry of Education, the President of the Chamber of Commerce, and
the current reigning Miss Universe Belize, Destiny Arnold. Of course, the new winner was going to be announced on Saturday. At 3. So, yeah, we want to say thank you to all our guests this morning for coming in, as always.
Yeah, of course. And we, of course, encourage you to tune in again tomorrow. There is always a lot to discuss, and tomorrow is Fun Friday. We're going to keep it nice and interesting for you. As in the meantime, if there's something that you would like to let us know, if you'd like to get in touch about appearing on the show, or just send your comments or questions, email us at oye@channel5belize.com. You can also drop me a line at marlene_oye@channel5belize.com.
You can find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ and on Instagram at OIE Belize.
And remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
Start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your heart open.
We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, Belize.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank, our country, your bank.